Welcome back to the Mental Health Matchmaker podcast. I'm your host, Brooke, and on this episode, I introduce you to Zohreh, a registered therapist who supports clients with a range of concerns, including immigration, anxiety, depression, and relationship challenges. We spend much of this conversation unpacking immigration experiences, breaking down first-generation and second-generation struggles to better understand how these differences can show up in clients' need for support. We also talk about relationship challenges that can be made more complex by immigrating as a couple, along with many other important and nuanced topics. Let's get into it. Zohreh, so happy to have you here.
Thank you so much, Brooke.
I wanted to start with the basics. What do people typically come to see you for? So I know you have a range of specialties, and what are some of them?
One of the main things that usually clients come to me for is their struggle with immigration. And then within that, we usually talk about anxiety, depression, and relationship issues as well.
Okay, cool. And I imagine when people come to you with the topic of immigration, that these things fall under that umbrella often if they're struggling.
Yes.
So when we chatted, we kind of broke it down into a couple categories because the impacts of immigration when it comes to the difficulties people experience can be different depending on the generation. When it comes to first generation, can you talk a bit about that and struggles that a lot of clients find when they identify with that?
So usually what happens is that people in their own country have built a lot of strength. They know their language, they know a community, but then when they come to a new country, they are basically starting from zero. And that's a lot of loss. That's a huge shock to their identity. And then usually they're like, oh my God, who am I? And what happened to all the things that I achieved all these years? And now I have to start from scratch. I have to learn a new language. I have to understand the culture. I have to show that I have those expertise. So in this new country, I have to start from scratch to build my experiences and show that I can do it. So what happens is that usually people, first of all, feel like a loss, and then they might be very harsh on themselves. They might, after a few months or even a year, they might tell to themselves, oh my God, I'm not to the point that I wanted to be. And but they are not realizing that this is huge. It's very difficult when you come to a new country and learning a lot of new things. So what happens is that we realize that critical voice, this is only one place that it shows itself after immigration. So it's something more general happening, that self-critical voice was present in other places too, but then in immigration it can show itself much more. So
you're saying that critical voice was likely there all along, but this sort of shines a light on it in a new, bigger way that can't really be ignored.
Yes, exactly, because that's a very big shift, and that critical voice can show itself completely.
Yeah, there's no hiding anymore.
Exactly. And then, so what happens is that we start to work on that voice, and we start to help clients to find out their strength and to become slowly more self-compassionate and understand the things that they already have achieved in this new country, and the courage that they had to actually leave their home country and come to a new country. That takes a lot of courage.
A lot of courage that a lot of people don't, it doesn't come naturally to a lot of people. That is huge. And I feel like there'd be so much pressure just generally finding your sense of belonging, adapting to a new culture, adapting to a new language. And then additionally, when you start to question your own identity, it would just feel like, what do I have to offer? So that reminder of look at what you have done. Not everyone could do this. This is huge and it shouldn't be overlooked.
They attach their identity a lot to what they have achieved.
Yeah.
So it's something external. So when, for example, they were in their home country, they achieved a lot of things, and then they were like, okay, I'm worthy because of all of these achievements. But then when they come to a new country and then they lose those, they might face avoiding themselves, and they realize that underneath it was actually a problem with the feeling of self-worth, an internal one.
And they didn't have to face it because in their mind they had ticked the box.
Yes.
They made it,
Mm-hmm.
even though the self-worth, it touches on such deeper levels within us.
Yes, definitely. So with those expertise, they were able to somewhat ignore what is happening underneath that. But then when they come to a new country, then they cannot hide beside that either. So they face themselves pretty closely, and and that's huge. That's difficult, and that's one of the things that we work on in our sessions, and we try to help them build that self-worth internally. So what happens is that although immigration is very tough and very hard, but people will become much more strong. They can rebuild themselves. That's a huge change for themselves, not only for external world, no, for their internal world. They become much more mature. They know themselves much better. They build a lot of new skills.
Yeah, it sounds like throwing yourself into the deep end and then having to look a lot deeper than you probably ever anticipated. You probably never could have seen it coming, and now you're just in it, and here you are facing yourself. Wow. So how do you help people get to that point? Like, what are some ways in session that you rebuild that relationship with self and sort of start to go into the internal world more?
Yeah. So usually we start with the meaning of those achievements that they had in their home country, and what does it mean to lose that. And then slowly they realize that, okay, those achievements meant that I am worthy. So then they realize, oh my God, then that's the moment, that's a shock. And then we start to look deeper and see, okay, what did you need, let's say growing up, to feel that you are worthy, regardless of what you achieve? And then they might usually talk about like what they needed to receive from their parents or their caregiver or the school that they were going to. And so we start to talk about a lot of the maybe deeper trauma, if you will, difficult experiences that they had, difficult emotions that they were suppressing and they didn't process. And then they have now the chance to talk about those emotions, those experiences from the past, and process them and find a new way of looking at the younger versions of themselves.
Wow.
Yeah, so the love that they needed to receive from, let's say, their caregiver, now they can provide that for that younger version themselves. Then they can start to feel like, okay, regardless of what I achieve, I am worthy, and I will show that to myself. I will be more compassionate to myself.
I feel like that's one of my favorite parts of adulthood, honestly, to be like the adult that you needed.
Yes, definitely. And that's where the agency comes in place, and the feeling of, okay, I'm not stuck anymore because now I can do something for myself. Yes, the past was gone. We cannot change the past, but let's see what I can do now for myself moving forward.
And I love that you obviously already have mentioned self-compassion. Maybe there wasn't a safety net for the things that you were experiencing, or maybe you weren't allowed to talk about how you were feeling. As an adult, part of being responsible is knowing that there is value to giving self-compassion, that is so important as well.
Yeah, validating our own emotions.
Yes, yeah. Now, second generation. Yeah. How can it look different? How can the two kind of link together? What shows up there?
Yes. For second generation, things are a bit different. They are very young when they come here. They come with their parents. Because they are young, they can much easily get into a new culture, understand their language, learn everything very quickly, and then much more quicker than their parents. So what happens is that probably their parents are relying on their children much more than they should have. So now we have a child who is facing this responsibility, and because they love their parents and they realize that, oh, our parents have sacrificed to help us to have new experiences, So now I have to help them, but at the same time, I'm a child. I want to be free. I don't want to have a lot of responsibilities. So that's where that inner conflict happens. And I think whichever way they chose, it's hard because either they will feel guilty towards their parents, or they would feel guilty towards themselves because now they have to forget about part of themselves. So, but what happens usually, so I'm working with adults, not with younger people. What happens is that as an adult, when they come to me and they start to talk about their childhood, usually what happens is that they start to take care of their parents more, or like the family as a whole. And so they become an adult much earlier that they should have, like it's prematurely. So now when they come to me, usually they are very angry at their parents, or they feel depressed because they forgot some part of themselves. So what happens is that we try to see, okay, what is that anger is about, and help them to first talk about that anger. And after talking about the anger, they usually get to a deeper part, which is actually grief and sadness of, okay, I lost the part of myself. I lost the part of childhood. And because being angry is much easier than facing that grief, they usually hold on to the anger. So it's difficult to work on the anger and help them to see what is underneath that anger. It doesn't mean that the anger is not valid, but it means that there is much more to it. And if we only focus on the anger, we miss an important part, which is the grief underneath, and the guilt and the love that they have towards their parents. Actually, they chose to help their parents because they love them. And so when they try to look at what is underneath that, they face grief. They also face the love that they have towards their parents, and the love that they have towards themselves. And that's difficult to hold, like all of these emotions at the same time. It's difficult. So
yeah, like you said, like there's this inner conflict. And I imagine in the beginning, before any of that is identified, you might feel completely frozen in it. Like, it makes me think of like a pinball machine, like it's bouncing you back and forth, and then it just feels like, well, I can't move. There's no movement here. And you're sort of helping them peel back these layers, and you're finding more beneath, and that's so fascinating. I always picture characters like this sort of fighter that's like really active, and that is pushing back, fighting back. And going deeper sometimes can feel scary because it feels like almost like you're exposing this more vulnerable part of you.
Yes, exactly. It is much more vulnerable. It is difficult to see sadness. When you are angry, you might feel like, okay, I have agency. I can do a lot of things. I can protect myself. But then when you let go of that anger and look at what is underneath, you might feel too vulnerable. You cannot protect yourself. And so if the outside world was in a way that you had to protect yourself all the time, then it is more scary to be vulnerable. So what is very important in therapy room is that we provide a safe space, non-judgmental space, so that the client feels like, okay, this space is safe enough. I can let go of that shield. And I'm not alone in this. The therapist is here, present, and help me slowly find the courage to face the vulnerability and to be vulnerable in this space. And then they can find strength within that, actually.
I was just going to say, so then what tends to happen? Because I've had this happen many times, and when I go to therapy, like often once I am present with that more vulnerable side of me, or that thing that I find that's deeper, a lot of the time I access this part of me that's self-assured. Maybe it touches on a value of mine that is like unshakable. And usually I do find strength, and I feel more connected to myself, which makes me feel refreshed in a way, or there's clarity there. And that's the part that I feel like more easily forget about, is that often when you do that scary thing of putting the guard down and you soften into the vulnerability, you can actually find strength there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely. And you made a very good point of connecting to ourselves. That connection gives
Mhm.
a lot of strength because a younger version of ourselves that didn't have the space to be herself or himself
Mhm.
or themselves.
Mhm.
But when growing up, you have that shield and you're not listening to what is happening underneath that, you are also somewhat abandoning that part of yourself.
Mhm.
So you might feel weak. But then when you saw that part and you get connected, then you will feel like, okay, I am giving myself that space to grow. Now I can hear different parts of myself.
Mm.
So it feels more like being in harmony
Mhm.
with different parts of ourselves, which feels more strong.
A lot of these clients come to you feeling that there might be anger there, and then beneath the anger there might be like secondary emotions. They might be feeling grief or loss, but then there's also the guilt tied to like, but I also know that my parents did the best they could. And that's a cool experience, I imagine, understanding that all of these things can coexist.
Mm-hmm.
It's not right versus wrong. It's not that generation is right and entitled to what they feel. It's everyone is.
Mm-hmm.
And it can be complicated because there's a lot going on, but all of it is valid.
Yes.
Which is hard for us to wrap our heads around often, that so many things can be true at once.
It is very difficult and it needs a lot of internal capacity to be able to hold all of these emotions at the same time. It is very hard. So when people come in with only one emotion, we completely understand that. And that's why we first stay with that emotion and try to explore it together. And then clients slowly find out, okay, there is something else underneath that. And then they can see that, okay, I'm both angry at my parents and I love them so much. And I feel guilty that I couldn't help more. And I also feel guilty that I didn't take care of myself more.
Mm-hmm.
And so we validate all of these emotions because all of them are valid.
Yeah.
And we are human beings. We have a lot of limitations. Just as parents, they had a lot of limitations. We are the same. So that gives a lot of self-compassion and also compassion for our parents, which then helps us to move past that anger and to build a new relationship with them as well, which is healing too.
Mm-hmm. For everyone involved.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, that's amazing. And that kind of helps us segue into the next part of this, which is about immigration and the impacts it has on relationships.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when couples come to a new country, so imagine that they're in their home country, they built something together. They knew each other very well. They built an identity for their relationship. And then they come to a new country, they face a huge change culturally because of their language. Financial stuff might happen. Maybe families work different here, like their roles of partners are different. And also individually they are facing change, like just we talked about earlier.
So much.
Yeah, so it's a lot to handle, both at the individual level and then now at the relationship level. What happens is that sometimes people get so much involved in their own difficulties and own challenges with immigration that they forget that their partner is also facing the same thing. And so they also need each other's help a lot. So that's a very difficult experience to be in. They need each other, but at the same time, they might be very angry at each other because they're like, oh, like, why you didn't do this or that? Or like, why you are not understanding me? Or why you are not taking care of me the way that you used to take care of me when we were back home. And these are all also valid, but what happens is that we try to help them put themselves in the other person's shoes. And usually what happens in our sessions is that they're like, wow, so you're experiencing the same thing that I'm experiencing. So we are actually in the same boat. And that can help them to feel that they are a team together and they are just facing a problem together. So that can help them to actually strengthen the relationship rather than staying as two people in front of each other and just accusing the other person that you're not understanding me.
Wow, yeah. I could see that being so challenging and there's so many layers to it.
Yes.
Because we're talking about two or whatever your relationship looks like, individuals. It's not just yourself and peeling the layers. It's these two worlds now.
Mm-hmm.
And although the experience has overlap and everything, I can imagine that there could even be friction if you did this big move together and maybe you're experiencing the same changes, but maybe you're adapting in different ways too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. So some people might be, as you said, adaptive more quickly. Maybe they learn English more quickly. Maybe they find a community more quickly. Right. Or maybe they can find a job more quickly. So there is a lot of changes. And then the other partner might feel like, okay, they are behind and they are not being seen, or like they might see that, okay, their partner is spending a lot of time with this new community, but then what about me? And all that stuff. And also something else that usually I'm seeing is that change in faith, or like change in their viewpoint towards life. That can also possible because when you come to a new country, you are facing a lot of new viewpoints.
Right.
And you might need to update how you look at the world, and which is also fair and actually helpful because you can now understand yourself better. You can have a more nuanced parts. But then if one partner feels like, oh, if my partner changes, what will happen to our relationship, and feel like very scared, then they might start to control the other partner. And that gets in the way of them understanding themselves, and also feel like, okay, my partner is controlling me. I need to like be more firm, or like set more boundaries, or like have some space from them. So that will lead to a vicious cycle of getting just far from each other. So what happens in therapy session is that we help them to have a space to talk about their inner world and what is happening. Okay, if you are starting to adopt a new viewpoint, what is happening for you? That like what does that mean for you? What is going on? How is the journey for you? And then the other partner that might not change and feel scared, we help them to talk about the fear with this partner, and then they can understand each other much better. And maybe they feel like, okay, it's not scary. My partner is not going anywhere, and they are just changing, and I might also change, or maybe I don't change. That's my choice too. But we can redefine our relationship in a new way. It's just our relationship. It's an entity by itself, and just as the way that as individuals we are changing, that entity can also change.
That's so cool. I even liked how you said at the beginning of this part of our conversation that the relationship has an identity that's kind of established, and that's what sort of gets shaken up when all these changes come into play. Just like your identity evolves and changes and shifts, that this relationship's identity, well, it kind of has to, right?
Definitely. It has to. And also, there is a good news. When you are able to solve those conflicts, your relationship gets very strong, and you get much more closer to each other. You will find a new depth. You feel like you have a relationship that you can rely on. So when you face a challenge as big as this and you solve it together, then you feel like, okay, I can rely on my partner. It's like going to a very difficult sport, let's say, and then you win. You can be much more confident in yourself and now in your relationship when you're facing something like immigration.
Yeah. Wow. That's incredible. I don't always do this, but I loved your story about how you had an experience where you were witnessing someone talk about something and they got really emotional and something struck a chord within you, which is kind of why you're here talking about this and doing what you do. Can you just tell that story as a way to round this out? Because it was lovely.
Thank you. Of course. Yeah, so it's about how I decided to become a psychotherapist. So I knew that I have this warm presence and I love to help people. So I got into psychology, but then as I was like studying psychology, part of me wasn't still sure. But what, as you said, struck the chord for me was that it was in one of our classes with our professor. He was showing the session of the client, and then one of the classmates asked the question, like, "Professor, have you ever had experience where you had to like hold on some of your emotions in the session so that the client won't see it?" And the professor said that, well, there were a lot of moments where I had to hold back my tears of joy when I see that clients are getting better. And that moment, I was like, wow, I love to experience that. And I love to be able to feel that, okay, the people are changing so much and they are getting so much better that I want to cry and that tear of joy. And that moment made me completely assured that I want this and I want to be a psychotherapist. And I'm so glad that now I'm here, and I was honored to actually witness those moments that people got better, both individually in their relationship, and I had to hold back my tears of joy.
That's so beautiful. I love moments where you witness something and you're like, oh, that touches me on such a deep level. Like it connects to your truth. When you have those moments, it's like undeniable.
Mm-hmm.
There's something there that you need to follow. And it also speaks to the way that you show up with the work that you do, and that it's this selfless way of serving the community. That's really cool to see.
Yeah, I really enjoy what I do, and I'm actually, I think it's an honor. I'm so glad that I can provide a safe space for clients to share their life with me. And I think that's very beautiful. They let me to come in their world and help them move forward in their life and heal their wounds and get better. And yeah, I find that an honor.
That's amazing. You are so incredible. Okay, so clients can find you located in Toronto and then virtually over phone video?
Yes.
It's been a delight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to you.